Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our program this evening. I'm Sarah Curitan. I'm Executive Director of the New Jersey Historical Commission, and it's my great honor to welcome you to tonight's program, Bringing New Jersey Black History to the People. Now, this program is part of our reinvigorated African American History program at the Commission, which is dynamically led by Noelle Lorraine Williams. And we're particularly excited about tonight's program because we think it is a great jumpstart to the work we're undertaking in creating the New Jersey Black Heritage Trail, because we're going to visit some amazing sites that tell the story of African American history in the state of New Jersey. So with that, welcome. We're thrilled to have you here this evening, and I'm delighted to introduce the director of our African American History program, Noelle Lorraine Williams.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Noelle Lorraine Williams. I am the director of the African American History program here at the New Jersey Historical Commission. And it's such a pleasure to have you here this evening for our program, Bringing New Jersey Black History to the People. Sarah said the African American History program was just reinvigorated over the past 2 years, and it's been an amazing opportunity to continue to support and amplify the work of the hundreds of folks across the state who are working to research Black history, save and promote their sites throughout the state, share information, and create opportunities for those in the state and those who come to visit to learn more and be enriched by African American history. We're so proud to announce, we were so proud to announce last year that the governor signed legislation for the Black Heritage Trail. And we look forward to developing all of the administration and the strategies for the Black Heritage Trail over the next couple of months. We're working on hiring a project manager and also someone else to work with the African American History program and the staff at the New Jersey Historical Commission to really learn about what our community needs are, what are the needs of historical sites, what are the needs of our students and our general population. So it is amazing to be here at the beginning of 2023 with some of our Black historic sites from across the state. I'm proud to welcome the Harriet Tubman Museum, Mount Peace Cemetery, and T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. They're going to share today their stories of creation, and then also their experiences with visitors, telling the history and the narratives of African Americans, and really just continuing to share. Some of you are familiar with these organizations and cultural institutions, and some will be introduced to them tonight. So we'll actually start off with introducing Gilda Rogers from the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. Gilda Rogers graduated with honors from Monmouth University. She's a professor at Brookdale. She was a professor at Brookdale College, also an award-winning journalist. And she wears the historian's hat. Gilda is the executive director. Gilda is the executive director of the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center, which opened to the public in 2019. She led the grassroots effort to save and preserve the former home of T. Thomas Fortune, a national historic landmark located in Red Bank, New Jersey. As she'll tell you the story of Fortune, he was one of the greatest African-American journalists and newspaper editors of the 19th and early 20th century. He was a courageous social justice creator, and he has been called the bridge to the modern day civil rights movement. Gilda has curated several exhibitions at the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center. In 2017, Ms. Rogers was named the Humanitarian of the Year by the Monmouth County Human Relations Commission. The American Association of University Women named Gilda as one of the honorees of its first ever Women of Achievement Award of 2018. I'd like to welcome you, Ms. Rogers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, proud to be a part of this event, to bring this history to the people of New Jersey. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up my presentation. Go to my slideshow. Okay, here we go. So T. Thomas Fortune. T. Thomas Fortune, I have here is the most famous person you have never heard of. T. Thomas Fortune, a social justice crusader for the ages. T. Thomas Fortune was born into slavery in 1856 in Marianna, Florida. He was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, attended the freedmen's schools. Fortune was biracial. His father, Emmanuel, was the son of the enslaved mother and took their name from the former Irish plantation owner, John Fortune, who he believed to be his father. T. Thomas Fortune's mother was of Native American and African ancestry. He could have passed as a white man, but instead he stood up for the rights of Black people, making this his life's work, and the reason he is known today as a trailblazing social justice crusader. In 1877, he attended Howard University with the intention to study law. However, he veered off into journalism because during Reconstruction, the reason he wanted to study law, during Reconstruction, his father was elected to the Florida Assembly, and Fortune at 13 years old worked as a Senate page. So he got to hear the nefarious workings of white politicians, and this at 13 years old became his life's work. In 1878, he goes further north and he establishes 3 newspapers, the first being the New York Globe, the second, the New York Freeman, and the third was the New York Age, which was one of the most widely read African-American newspapers in the nation. It is said to have rivaled the New York Times. T. Thomas Fortune's newspaper was located in New York, in Manhattan. He lived in Brooklyn with his family for 24 years before relocating to Red Bank in 1901. And when he came to Red Bank, his arrival was actually announced in the Red Bank Register newspaper. Fortune wrote a book, Black and White, Land, Labor, and Politics in the South, in 1884 at the age of 28, along with over 300 editorials about the failure of Reconstruction, lynching, and the economic injustices that African Americans suffered in this country. I have this quote up here, "Progress moves forward ever, backward never," because many people might have seen this quote before, and it's been attributed to Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first president of Ghana, independent Ghana, and he used this quote. He made it famous. But as it turned out, this quote was actually in Fortune's book that he wrote in 1884. So we know it's his quote because Kwame Nkrumah was not even born until 1909. And these are some of Fortune's contemporaries. And these are the agents of change during the time that Fortune is really revving up in what he's doing as one of the most prolific, revered, and feared journalists of his time. And the agents of change would be Ida B. Wells, James Weldon Johnson, the scientist Lewis Latimer, who doesn't get enough credit for his role in the invention of the light bulb. We always hear it attributed to Thomas Edison, but it was Lewis Latimer who really developed the filament and the reason why the bulb lights. We have Walter White, who was the chairman of the NAACP, the great scholar W.E.B. Du Bois, Mary Church Terrell, and the educator Booker T. Washington. These were all people who were engaged with each other at this time in trying to move forward equal opportunities and justice for African-American people. One of Fortune's famous phrases was, "I believe in the divine right of man, not of caste or class." These were the words that T. Thomas Fortune said in a speech titled, "The Present Relations of Labor and Capital," on April 20th, 1886, before the Literary Union in Brooklyn, New York. And he was 30 years old at the time. This is his home that when he lived here in 1901, he dubbed it Maple Hall. And this is a home where people like Booker T. Washington, Lewis Latimer, I'm sure Ida B. Wells, and others visited him. We actually have newspaper articles saying when Booker T. Washington and Lewis Latimer and an entourage of people came to visit Fortune. Well, that was the house in 1976, prior to this slide, which then was designated a National Historic Landmark. By 2006, it had fell into total disrepair. And this picture doesn't even tell you how bad it really was. The house was in very bad shape, had been terribly vandalized. It was an eyesore in the community. But when you look at the house, as I would see it, because I live in Red Bank, I always thought it was very stately and beautiful, even in its worst shape. And this was before I knew Fortune had lived in the house. So in 2012, under my leadership, a diverse group of concerned citizens, we formed the T. Thomas Fortune Project Committee with the intent to educate the Red Bank community and beyond about the work of T. Thomas Fortune. In 2017, the group was granted nonprofit 501c3 status as a charitable organization as the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation. We did many things to try to garner the public's attention, to save the house, and bring awareness to the plight of the home. We convened a symposium at Brookdale Community College in 2013 with invited speakers, Linda Shockley of Lawnside, who's a dear friend of mine, and who's a member of the National Association of Black Journalists, and the late Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Les Payne graced us with his presence there that day too, to sing Fortune's praises. We were actually written up in the New York Times in 2015. So we start to get, national attention. New Jersey Network and other places started to, after this article ran in the newspaper, started to focus their attention on the T. Thomas Fortune House. So this is the house today. The T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center opened in May of 2019. And we all know what happened afterwards, and we were closed down for a good while. So this is the inside of the house. It looks a little different now. We have a little bit more furnishings in here, but you can tell the rehabilitation and the restoration of the house is top notch. The developer, Roger Mumford, who, if it were not for him, we would not be in this house. And he brought it back to what you see here on the screen. This is some of the artwork you will find in the house. To my left is a piece called Social Justice Crusaders, Past, Present, and Future with Fortune, and the artist is Lavette Ballard. And her signature pieces, she uses fence posts as her canvas. And we commissioned another artist named Julia Rivera, who did the piece in the middle with the hand that says enough, that is self-explanatory. And then our last piece, which we have other pieces, but these are our three like big signature pieces, is a piece that was created by Alan Burgess. And it talks about and showcases the writers of the Harlem Renaissance. We have two exhibits going on right now at the Cultural Center. This one, called Ancestral Ascension, is the story of the Parker family. And the Parker family were a family of medical doctors, all right? Dr. James Parker, who was on this slide, attended Howard University, found his way to Red Bank, made a name for himself by curing the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. He paid his way through Howard University by being a Pullman car porter. He and A. Philip Randolph were the best of friends. And A. Philip Randolph has ties in Red Bank. This house has a lot of history to it. We have another exhibit there. If you don't know, Count Basie was born in Red Bank. He was born in Red Bank in 1904. His parents are part of the Great Migration, and Count Basie is part of the Harlem Renaissance. So it gave me the opportunity to tell both of those stories. And the name of this exhibit is called A Love Letter to Count Basie, From the Great Migration to the Harlem Renaissance. And that's one of our volunteers, showing the CEO from Monmouth Medical Center, the exhibit, and Dr. Parker Jr., who was the son of Dr. Parker Sr., actually was the first African-American doctor to be on staff at Monmouth Medical Center and Riverview Medical Center. His father had no hospital privileges. And these are some of the things that you'll find out in the exhibit on the Parker family. And last but not least, Fortune has made it to the big screen, so to speak, or has gone to Hollywood. He is featured as a real character in the HBO Max series called The Gilded Age. The actor who plays Fortune, Sullivan Jones, has visited us at the Cultural Center to do a little research, and the series has been renewed for a second season. So we're very excited about this. This has garnered us, more national attention and has brought Fortune out of obscurity into the light where, he really, really belongs, because he was one of the most premier journalists of his time and newspaper publishers, and really was a trailblazer and was called the bridge to the modern day civil rights movement, because he opened the door for many people that we hear their names. Ida B. Wells, when her newspaper was burned down in Memphis, Fortune had Ida B. Wells come up and work out of his newspaper in New York so that she could carry forth her anti-lynching campaign. So he's someone that we all should know, and I'm proud to be a part of this endeavor to tell his story and to invite people to come and visit us at the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center located in Red Bank. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gilda. That was really a powerful presentation. And I didn't know that Ida B. Wells worked for Fortune. I have to just quickly note to everyone that the New York Age is one of the best newspapers for researching early African-American history life in the 20th century. I can't explain, you learned so much. One of our presenters, Cindy Mullock from the Harriet Tubman Museum, I told her about a year ago, there's so much you learn about the Cape May community, middle class communities that we never learned in undergraduate. But through reading these newspapers, they tell so much about our history. So
Yeah.
I'm so excited with this combination of popular media and the way it's kind of piquing people's interest about diverse Black lives. So thank you. We will have question and answer at the end. So folks, please leave any of your questions in the Q&A or the chat box. Okay, thank you, Gilda. So now I'm going to introduce Dolly. And let's see. So Dolly Marshall. Dolly Marshall is a historical preservation activist, researcher, and genealogist. Ms. Marshall leads many community partnerships related to African-American experiences and the African diaspora, bringing this crucial part of history to life for the public. Ms. Dolly Marshall is a trustee of the Mount Peace Cemetery Association, is a member of the Association of Black Women Historians, a member of both the National Trust for Historic Preservation and the Association for the Study of African American Life in History. She is the recipient of the 2022 Public Service Award from the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia. In the 2022 Chancellor's Award for Diversity, Inclusion, and Civic Engagement at Rutgers University, Camden. And in 2021, the winner of the David H. Knight's New Preservation Initiatives Award. Ms. Marshall is also a student at Rutgers University, Camden, and will graduate with honors this spring with a major in Africana Studies and History. She continues her devoted stewardship of Mount Peace Cemetery and considers her work with the younger generation at the cemetery critically important. Originally serving as a volunteer over the past 4 years, she has evolved into a preservation steward and seeks to promote Mount Peace's cemeteries, hidden African-American history through education across the region, the state of New Jersey, and nationally. Please join me in welcoming Dolly Marshall.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Noelle, for that introduction. I am so happy to be here this evening on this amazing program, bringing New Jersey Black history. And I'm going to start my screen. Okay. All right. So again, welcome to bringing New Jersey Black history to the people. I am one of the trustees of Mount Peace Cemetery Association located in Lawnside, New Jersey. Lawnside is a historically African-American settlement and happens to be the first self-governing African-American municipality north of the Mason-Dixon line. And I started as a volunteer because I had a deep interest in finding out about my own genealogy, and I'm going to take you along on my journey. So I'm starting off with a photograph of a husband and wife that are buried in Mount Peace. That's Irene and Henry Langford, and it's meaningful to me because I am motivated by all of the narratives and stories within Mount Peace Cemetery. So this is how Mount Peace got its start. Its creation is because of Jim Crow segregation. This is a newspaper article from the Courier Post dated July 22nd, 1901. It was on the front page of the newspaper in regards to the African-American citizens of the city of Camden protesting the city and urging them that they would also have to be buried in the whites-only cemeteries, city cemeteries. However, the two Black cemeteries that were in existence at the time were soon filling up, so it was a definite urgent need. And the city cemetery in particular pulled out an 1836 charter that explicitly said that the cemeteries were distinctively put in place to only inter white people only. So that necessitated prominent African-American citizens to convene and get together and purchase an 18-acre tract of farmland. And the picture in the middle is a view of Mount Peace during the early 1900s to create a cemetery where African-Americans could be buried with dignity and respect. So Mount Peace Cemetery was organized in 1900. During this time, African-Americans were excluded from other non-secular burial grounds. The cemetery was built on farmland sold to the former enslaved and free people of color in 1902 by the descendants of Nathan Willits, who was a well-known Quaker abolitionist in the community of Freehaven, which Lawnside was originally known as. Then subsequently, the township was renamed Snow Hill, and then currently it's called Lawnside. So it went over 3 name changes. The cemetery is located in a town that was a station stop on the Underground Railroad. Mount Peace Cemetery was created to provide a greater respect and guardianship to the African-American communities of several neighboring towns in Camden County. It is the final resting place of many notable African-Americans, including Civil War veterans and a Medal of Honor winner, John Henry Lawson. In addition, buried at Mount Peace are veterans of all foreign wars, African royalty, and persons listed in the Negro Motorist Green Book. The cemetery is a Lawnside landmark and is also listed on the state and national registers of historic places. Mount Peace Cemetery Association, which consists of a board of trustees, was created by several community members. Our mission is we are committed to restoration, community engagement, and educating the public on the culture and forgotten achievements of African pioneers. So speaking of pioneers, this is Dr. Reverend Alexander Heritage Newton. He's buried in Mount Peace Cemetery. He was a distinguished Civil War veteran, enlisted in the 29th Connecticut Volunteers. At 17 years of age, Reverend, well, he wasn't Reverend, Alexander Newton was a railroad conductor on the Underground Railroad. And he details in his autobiography called Out of the Briars, Many Daring Escapes. He was the leader of the AME Church for 50 plus years. He pastored in Camden at the Macedonia AME and Hosanna churches. He was a delegate to the New Jersey State Republican Conventions. He led the invocation at Camden City's annual Memorial Day celebrations. He was a Freemason. And Mr. Newton was also one of our founding trustees of the cemetery. So I think it's the Cemetery Association. So I think it's very apropos to lead off with him. And as I said, he wrote his autobiography called Out of the Briars in 1910 while he was living in Camden, New Jersey. This is another one of our original directors, a gentleman named Malachi D. Cornish. He was a scholar and born in Philadelphia. He graduated from the Institute of Colored Youth in 1878, which is the same school that Octavius Cotto was a graduate from. He was a progressive teacher, principal. He believed in empowering the youth, and he was a founder, one of the founders of the South Camden branch of the YMCA. He was also a director of Mount Peace along with Mr. Newton when we first formed our board. and Mr. Cornish is buried in Mount Peace. That is a picture of his monument. This is very exciting. Last fall, the National Park Service designated Mount Peace Cemetery as a National Underground Railroad site, and it's designated on behalf of research that I did over a 2-year period about Reverend Newton, and it made the front page of the newspaper. It's very important that people are aware of not only cemetery preservation, but individuals that are buried in the cemetery. And so we have a lot of different programs, and our main goal for our programs is the outreach and public awareness. So some of our programs are walking tours. Walking tours are very integral because it gives people the opportunity to take in the landscape of the cemetery, the vistas of the cemetery, the trees, the headstones, and also to learn the stories within the cemetery. We also have programs such as headstone restoration classes, and they are led by our volunteers. So I try to get as many people involved in presenting and interpreting our history, because other people are just as excited as me, and a lot of initiatives are led by other volunteers. So these are actually some volunteers taking the time, their own time, to teach a headstone restoration class to people who've signed up. So that's one of the things you could do when you come to Mount Peace. And this is a demonstration of actually going through. I don't want to play all of it, but just wanted to give you an idea of the different kind of things that go on within the cemetery. Headstone restoration is very important because over time, a lot of the headstones deteriorate. Also, we do a lot of programming with our scouts, our Boy Scouts of America, our Girl Scout troops. They come in and not only participate in service days, they learn a lot about Black history as well. Another initiative is a new initiative that I started. It's called the Camden Black History Profiles. It's a series of interpretive literature, content, social media content, I should say, about some of the individuals that are either buried in Mount Peace or have a direct connection to Mount Peace. This is William Frank Powell, who was also an educator in the Camden City area, one of our directors, and also he has a street named for him within Mount Peace, and that is the sign right there. And that is my brother in the middle, helping us put up the sign honoring Mr. Powell. Mount Peace is also a certified wildlife habitat, which a lot of people probably aren't aware of. We are designated by the National Wildlife Federation. To the right, you'll see during the fall season, lots and lots of wild turkeys. To the left, that's me holding a picture of an ornamental plant known as a yucca plant. And a yucca plant you'll see throughout the cemetery, and you'll actually see throughout a lot of African-American cemeteries as grave markers. So here are some more trees and burial plants of Mount Peace. We are designated a level 1 arboretum, and that also was a volunteer-driven initiative accomplished by a volunteer who set out to do that last fall and assisted me in identifying more than 25 species of trees in the cemetery. And that tree to the right is called a catalpa tree. It's very distinctive. In the fall, the leaves kind of roll up and they look like cigars or little like pods. And we also do service learning. Mount Peace is also an outdoor classroom. We work with many schools, high schools, elementary schools, students in general, and we connect with teachers all over New Jersey and the tri-state, and providing service hours for many students to come and learn, help maintain the cemetery in cleanup days, participate in research, and a lot of the young people are very, very motivated. Once they come to the cemetery one time, many of them are return visitors. This is the Negro Motorist Green Book, which many of you have heard about, created by Victor Hugo Green. It served as a guide, a directory for African Americans while they were traveling across the roads of the United States, and it gave them a guide on what facilities and establishments that were safe for them to stop at. So in Mount Peace, we do have individuals that are listed on that guide, and this is a 1954 edition with Henry Smith. He had a barbershop on Moldy Road, and that is his headstone there to the left, and Henry Smith also was my great uncle. We also do things as helping the descendant community. We help with research, locating ancestors, and we'll also help to connect descendants to other African American cemeteries. So these are two descendants that we help reconnect and finding their loved ones' graves. Another initiative we've taken on is recording oral histories. And these are some of the resources that I utilize and like to share to the public that'll help in the genealogy aspect of it. These are some of our events, Decoration Day, which is also known as Memorial Day. And these are some of our upcoming events to look forward to. And I want to thank you, and I appreciate having this opportunity to speak about the work, but most importantly about preservation and conservation and learning about hidden African American history. So I implore everyone who is in the area to come and visit, to schedule a walking tour, or even if you're not in the area, please contact us online and sign up for our newsletter, because we have a lot of great virtual content as well. Thank you so much.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Gilda. Thank you, Dolly. One of the things that's really important that we'll explore a little bit in the question and answer session, but we'll always continue to explore for the rest of the year, is this whole concept of the different ways that people come together to promote the sites, which involves research, but it also involves building communities with people in your neighborhood, people throughout the state and other entities like state agencies, and also nationally as well. So I think both with the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center and with Mount Peace, we saw evidence of that in both of the presentations. I would like to take this opportunity to present Cindy Mullock from the Harriet Tubman Museum. Let me share with you some of Cindy's bio this evening. Cindy Mullock is the founding executive director of the Harriet Tubman Museum of New Jersey and has guided it from the local preservation project to a nationally recognized history and art museum since its founding in 2019. The museum has been recognized by Smithsonian Magazine as one of the 10 most anticipated museums in the world for 2020, and by USA Today's Readers' Choice Awards as the 5th best new museum in the United States in 2021. It was recently nominated for the National Medal for Museum Service for the fiscal year 2023 by US Senator Cory Booker, with bipartisan support from Governor Murphy, US Representative Van Drew, among many others. Cindy graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a BA in English and political science and earned her law degree from Columbia Law School, where she was an articles editor of the Columbia Law Review, and an MBA from Columbia Business School. Please join me in welcoming Cindy Mullock.
Thanks so much, Noelle. I am so grateful to be here. I've already learned so much from Gilda and Dolly, and I am really excited to visit the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center and Mount Peace Cemetery. As Noelle spoke about before, I think something that connects these sites importantly is all of this site work and preservation work that has gone behind them. It's important to note that only approximately 2% of, sorry, I'm just getting into the right screen here. Only approximately 2% of the sites listed on the National Register of Historic Places are associated specifically with African American history. And so, and only about 3% of our architects are African American. And so it's, we really need, as Noelle was saying, a lot of communities to come together around these historic sites. And these are labors of love where people connect and understand our collective history. The story of the origin story of the Harriet Tubman Museum was just that. So this is the Howell House in its before state. And the Howell House was gifted to the Macedonia Baptist Church, a historically Black church next door, by a Quaker family, the Howell family, headed by George Howell. It served as the parsonage for the Macedonia Baptist Church on this intersection in Cape May of Lafayette Street and Franklin Street that we call Freedom's Corner because of the important abolitionist communities that came together around this intersection. So the Howell House again served as the parsonage for the church for many decades, many years, and the last family to live there was the Davis family. Reverend Davis was the pastor of the church for 47 years, so a really long time that he was leading the congregation. But they found their own home, so they moved out of the Howell House. And over a course of nearly 40 years, it sat vacant and, as you can see, dilapidating and fell into very severe disrepair. In 2012, it was listed on Preservation New Jersey's list of 10 most endangered historic sites in the state of New Jersey. And this historic site, as many others, was threatened with, it was nearly dilapidated. It was threatened with being demolished. Many people thought that it couldn't be preserved. And our project started in 2019 with a number of conversations over 2018, but started in earnest in 2019 to preserve the Howell House. And we had so many volunteer contractors, developers, so many volunteer plumbers, electricians, the scouts came out and helped, but also a number of volunteer historians and researchers who were looking into the, until then, generally untold history of the abolitionist communities that came together around this street and this intersection. Harriet Tubman, of course, was one of those people and has become a household name, but many of her supporters, her abolitionist supporters and the allies that supported that community were there as well and should also be household names, including William Still, Stephen Smith, and a number of others who are highlighted in the museum. This is the Harriet Tubman Museum in its current state. And this is a visit from the Amistad Commission. New Jersey, under legislation, is required to teach African American history in all of our classrooms throughout the state of New Jersey. And so these are a number of educators and administrators from the Amistad curriculum development, including Dr. Stephanie James Harris, who has led the Amistad Commission from its inception for 17 years and recently departed from the Amistad Commission, and grateful to say that she has joined us as a consultant and advisor on our programming and educational programming development. So what was Harriet Tubman doing in Cape May? Why Cape May? She was very active in the Underground Railroad at the time period when she was in Cape May. She had recently escaped the Eastern Shore of Maryland in 1849, and we can document that she was in Cape May in the early 1850s. We can certainly document 1852. It's likely that she was in Cape May other summers around the early 1850s as well. She had made her journey to freedom up to Philadelphia, and she met and coordinated with a group of abolitionists there, the Anti-Slavery Society. She met William Still, who is often referred to as the father of the Underground Railroad. And that group, it turns out, a number of the abolitionists that she was working with in Philadelphia and who were supporting her missions back to the Eastern Shore of Maryland to bring so many other people up to the north to freedom, that many of those abolitionists were visiting Cape May in the summers. And we have a number of birthdays that we're celebrating. We're not only celebrating, of course, Black History Month, but Harriet Tubman was most likely born in late February to perhaps mid-March. We celebrate nationally Harriet Tubman Day on March 10th, but that actually is recognizing the date of her death in 1913, because she, of course, didn't know the date of her birth in her lifetime. Her tombstone says that she was born in 1820. More recent research dates it to 1822. There was a receipt or an invoice that was found, some accounting that was found, a payment that was made to a midwife to help her mother, Harriet. And that was dated 1822. It was mid-March, the timing of that receipt, so, and the timing of that accounting. So it's most likely that her birth would have been late February to mid-March. So it could even be today. This is some background information on William Still, again, often considered the father of the Underground Railroad, a native son of New Jersey. He was one of the leads of the Anti-Slavery Society, one of the people that Harriet Tubman met with when she first came to Philadelphia on her original journey to freedom. And he took meticulous notes of all of the freedom seekers who came through his office, some 800 freedom seekers who came through his office. And he would ask them essentially what we might think of as an intake interview. He would ask them dozens and dozens of questions about where they were coming from, who their enslaver was, how they were treated, what family they left behind. And he would inscribe these meticulous firsthand accounts in volumes and volumes of material that after the Civil War, he ended up publishing as the Underground Railroad in 1872. And so a lot of our documentation of Harriet Tubman's journeys come from, she would bring her charges to the Anti-Slavery Society office, and William Still would document them. And you can see here a number of those narratives from these freedom seekers document people crossing the Delaware Bay and following the beacon of the lighthouse in Cape May. Delaware, of course, was slavery territory, and so they would come over by a small skiff or a rowboat and make their way up to Philadelphia from there, where they would meet with William Still. And this is Stephen Smith. He was one of the founders of the Anti-Slavery Society. And importantly, he was born into slavery in Pennsylvania. He managed to do a number of side jobs, save his earnings from those side jobs, and he was able to negotiate his freedom with his enslaver. His enslaver was in the lumber industry, and so he had learned the lumber industry inside and out. He began his own lumber company, and in doing so with his business partner, William Whipper, he became one of the richest Black men in the United States at that time. And so he used his prominence and influence from this wealth that he aggregated in order to help other people, and became one of the founding members of the Anti-Slavery Society. And also with that wealth, he purchased a summer home in Cape May. And so he is likely the reason that these abolitionist activists in Philadelphia would have been traveling to Cape May. He had not only his summer home built in 1845, 1846, and you can see that to the left, but also right next to his summer home, which you can see in the lower picture, to the right of that, there's an L-shaped building, a stone building, and that was called the Banneker House. And he became a partner in the Banneker House. The Banneker House was built around the same time, 1845, 1846, and it had over 30 rooms. It was one of the first free Black resorts in the United States. And so this corner, what we call Freedom's Corner, is where all of these abolitionist activists, including Harriet Tubman, would travel to Cape May in the summers. And she was working as a domestic laborer, she said, and as a cook in order to earn those proceeds that she needed to support her missions back down to the Eastern Shore in her activity on the Underground Railroad, bringing people up to freedom. This is an 1850 map of Cape May. So these are the streets that these abolitionist activists, these national heroes, would have been walking. And this, of course, is the time of the fugitive slave law that was passed in 1850. This was federal law that made it illegal to help these freedom seekers who had escaped their horrific conditions. And so much of this activity was considered illegal at this point. It was illegal under federal law, and the offices of the Anti-Slavery Society were continually under threat, that those volumes of material that William Still had been documenting, he often hid them in a graveyard in order to preserve them. And the timeline, this, in 1852, when we can document that Harriet Tubman was in Cape May, this is the same summer that Frederick Douglass was giving his speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July in Rochester, New York, just to contextualize that a little bit. I'm going to move forward just to present day, and some of the preservation work that has been happening in Cape May as a consequence of the attention that was attracted to all of this history, the important African-American history in Cape May. Now, on this same intersection on Franklin Street, the Allen AME Church is being preserved. It unfortunately suffered an accidental electrical fire in 2018. The Howell House, of course, has been preserved. You can see here that so many of these historic sites along Lafayette Street and throughout the neighborhood during urban renewal were destroyed. To the back of the museum is the Franklin Street School. This was the segregated school of Cape May that also sat vacant for many decades and is now being preserved into a community center and a library. And we are interested in amplifying this history, not just from Cape May. We are gratified that the government of New Jersey, the state assembly, the state senate And Governor Murphy, all unopposed, unanimously voted the Harriet Tubman Museum of New Jersey, and that was signed into law by Governor Murphy. And so we are looking to support 21 counties in preserving historic sites and amplifying their untold history. Of course, there's no monopoly on untold history. There are a number of sites that need help and support from our communities that can engage with these sites and learn together about our collective history. And that is what's happening in these photos. We have an incredible program right now where a nonprofit called Friday is Tie Day. High school mentees of color are developing our museum app and our virtual tours so that we can expand the narratives of the museum and amplify those and have those available to throughout the state of New Jersey, throughout the region, and throughout the nation. And I know that Noelle has been working so hard on the Black Heritage Trail that was just signed into law by Governor Murphy in September. This is going to be such a boost to so many of these sites that have been preserved and that need preservation, that need amplification, and that can help us reflect on and celebrate the important contributions of the African American community here in New Jersey. And along with all of the educational programming and virtual tour development that we're doing, we are engaging with classrooms, and we are developing curriculum that will serve through K through 12. And we're very excited to see that New Jersey will be broadening and expanding the number of schools that have access to the AP African American Studies course, the advanced placement course through the College Board, and that was just announced last week. So thank you so much for your time and for giving me this opportunity to introduce the Harriet Tubman Museum. And thanks, Noelle.
Great. Thank you, Cindy, for an excellent presentation. It's always so amazing to me how all the different stories tie together. I look forward to exploring that. So we're going to open up, so we noticed that there are folks who have put questions into the Q&A. So please, we will read those questions. I see that one of our panelists from last year, William Galetta, he's posted a request just for folks who might be interested in learning more about the slave trade and Perth Amboy. I posted a link to our program from last year that's on our YouTube page. So if you would like to view that, please copy the link. Again, I would like to encourage everyone to please join the New Jersey Historical Commission list, mailing list. You'll find out about our grant opportunities, our programs, the Black Heritage Trail, also join our YouTube. We've also posted the links to all of the organizations. And so please feel free to use those. You all have the invitation. So we will now continue with the question and answer. I would like to welcome Gilda to join us. And great. There we go. So one of the things, so the first question is, and before I continue, I just want to say, I didn't get to commend all of these amazing women who are presenting today, who are powerful scholars, thinkers, community organizers, who are really doing amazing work, thinking through these histories, presenting them to the public, bringing the community together, and just doing amazing educational interpretation and advocacy work. So just kudos as we enter Women's History Month. But of course, we don't need to wait till Women's History Month to celebrate the work of women. So I will read the first question from Karen Finkelstein. So she said, thank you so much to Ms. Dolly Marshall for her work in preserving Mount Peace right here in Monmouth County, New Jersey. Right now, there is an African-American cemetery that is endangered by third-party developers who are in the process of stealing this Black-owned land and burying ground from its descendants. What advice do you have for building a coalition to stand with Black families who are fighting to hold on to their land and the land of their ancestors?
Hi, Karen. Yes, my advice is definitely to get together. I mean, it starts with one person. So convene with some of the descendant community, which sounds like are involved to me. I don't know all the details, but I mean, go to the press, go to the local newspaper, get this story out here so that we're all aware of it and that it just doesn't live inside of Monmouth County. Also, I work as a volunteer at the State House of New Jersey as a docent. You can also introduce legislation for a bill to be passed. Any citizen can do this. A bill can be passed so that any construction on sacred sites such as cemeteries could be halted when it's discovered that it's a cemetery. So we have a lot more power than we recognize. So, but it all starts with starting a coalition, that's the perfect word that you used, and really get people involved, organize, and speak about it. And that's what I do. I speak about it to anyone who will listen, and I really engage the public, and the more people you can get involved in this, the better. So I'm sorry that that's happening, but unfortunately, it's an issue all across the country.
There was actually another quick question for you, Dolly, on the yucca plant in the cemetery.
Oh, yes. Yucca plants are an ornamental plant. They are used a lot. You'll see them a lot in African-American cemeteries, burial grounds. They are used not only because they're beautiful, they're symbolically used because they ward off evil spirits. And they are oftentimes, they serve as grave markers because not all persons of color could afford granite headstones or a headstone in general. So yucca plants are used to actually mark a grave. So when you see a yucca, oftentimes it might be the only thing that remains a visible remnant of a burial ground. So it's very, very sacred in the African American and indigenous communities because the roots were also used as medicinal for medicinal purposes to treat different ailments.
I noted that Rashida Nelson said, thank you for this amazing program to everyone. So one of the things, since we have about 15 minutes left, is I would just like, one of the things that I think is, I'll just say this quickly, is the way that you all are integrating different kinds of interpretation at the site, right? So it's environmental work, there's scholarly work going on. And so we see this multi-layered engagement for communities to come engage with the sites so that even if one is not necessarily going to say read interpretation and education, you may want to do that like later on in the summer. There are still other opportunities at the sites, outdoor engagement, performances that folks can also participate in, which is very exciting. since there are different audiences that learn about history in different ways. So it looks like, Amina Toller has asked, any advice to help a newly formed nonprofit org who just saved and acquired the James Howell House in Montclair on how to best partner and engage with other organizations who have done the same work? So any of you who want to answer that, please answer. And I think I actually also skipped another question. So would anybody like to answer that question? Any advice to a newly formed nonprofit org who just saved and acquired the Howell House in Montclair, how to best partner and engage with other orgs who have done the same work?
I would say you want to start just making your presence known, like really letting people know what you have acquired and why you need their help. And you need to start making presentations about the importance of the property, wherever you can make these presentations, usually in libraries, in people's homes, at church, civic organizations that have meetings. They usually want to bring in someone before they have a meeting. And these are great places to connect with, because more than likely they don't know, the situation. So you have a captive audience. So I think the first thing you have to do is just to let people know you're here and why they need to support you. That's what we did.
Are there any other comments on that question?
Yes. First of all, congratulations on acquiring and saving the site. That is definitely the most important first step. So, so kudos to you. I've been really astounded at how supportive this community is. There are so many people who, it's a labor of love for so many people. Noelle probably knows better than I do the number of historic sites that operate on a budget of under $25,000 a year. So it is really volunteer focused. I don't want to exaggerate, but I think that's maybe 80% or some high percentage number of the historic sites are really a labor of love. And you, from the very beginning, you are kind of bootstrapping. Right. So there are definitely some different, I think the Fortune site had a major sponsor that helped with the preservation, but when you're starting out as a new nonprofit, it is very unrealistic to think that someone's going to come along and give you $1 million check, and that just a little bit of publicity is going to preserve the site. You're really going to be heavily reliant on volunteers. But I've been so impressed with how supportive the community is. So definitely reach out to other organizations who've been, they will open the doors with guidance and what worked for them, what didn't work for them. Social media is your best friend. You really need to amplify your message and get right on all of the different social media platforms to make sure that people are hearing and amplifying your message. If I'm thinking of the right site, I think you've actually had a great deal of publicity at the gate. I think I've heard about this site on NPR, I believe, but I think you've also hit some other major news organizations. So kudos on that as well. But I think that, it sounds like you're going in the right direction. You secured the site. You're getting a lot of publicity. Start connecting with all of the other organizations. Noelle's office is incredible. The New Jersey Historical Commission has been incredibly supportive of us. If you're not in touch with your county already, get right in touch with your county, because we started our support at the county level and worked our way up, again, bootstrapping to state level support. And it also depends on your plans. I'm gonna leave it there. We can always catch up on more advice, but having just been through all of this, if you have artistic ambitions or even just art historical art. Also look to the State Council on the Arts, and there are so many other places that can support project funding.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Cindy. Also, as you indicated, sometimes there is funding at the county level. I think it is very important that even when you think you've gotten a lot of press, to continue to amplify that press, and to continue to partner with the libraries and community associations and other folks. Thank you very much, Mark, for posting that. We got a couple of appreciations for the program. So let's see, if there aren't any more questions, I would just like to encourage our panelists to please share any closing comments, and we will be sharing this program along with our other programs on our YouTube channel. And we look forward to continue to engaging everyone over the next year. So Dolly, did you have any closing comments? Because I know you have to go soon.
Yes, I'd like to share with the audience that in particular with cemetery preservation, the deceased need our help. The deceased need help from the living. So we have to continually all be the stewards for their dignity and respect, the maintaining of sacred spaces, sharing the information, uncovering the information, the true information. So I implore everyone to adopt a community cemetery, because there's many in every community.
Thank you. So Gilda or Cindy?
Okay. I'm actually working with a cemetery. I don't know if the woman who asked Dolly for the, assistance, I'm working with a cemetery in Monmouth County too, in Lincroft, Cedarview, which we're working to preserve too. But talking about the Fortune Cultural Center, I would invite people to please visit our website. Our mission is to uphold the civil rights and social justice legacy of T. Thomas Fortune through education, the arts, community engagement, and public programming. And we do a lot of public programming. As a matter of fact, this coming Saturday, we're having a fashion show, honoring Black History Month, called African Tapestry. So fashion is by Rashida, but we have a youth program called the Fortune Tellers, and they work with us to get them involved in all aspects of what we do at the Cultural Center, because, the youth are our future, and it's important for them to know this history, and it's important for them to have hands-on experience in learning it. And we do in the summertime outside on our lawn, we have jazz and music. So I would say, please visit our website and look at our sign up. Please sign up for our news magazine called Fortune Forward. So all of our events are in there, and great editorials about what we're doing, what others are doing, and we share other people's, work as well. So I'm just glad to be a part of this, and I'm grateful to be here with all of the other ladies who are doing, this robust work. It's very important. It's very important.
Thank you. Any other comments, Cindy?
Yeah, I'll just say that again, there's no monopoly on untold history. I find this a really incredibly empowering conversation, and I hope that everybody is inspired to look around in their own communities and see what is the untold history of your community? What are the projects that you can support? Because these preservation projects, a lot of times, if they're dilapidated, they are at risk of being demolished, and we don't get them back. So it's really important to protect and preserve these historic sites.
Great, thank you. There were a couple of questions, some around newspaper sites. I want to again encourage, Mark, can you please post the links to the mailing list and the YouTube links as well? I want to please encourage everyone to either visit their local libraries to get information about newspapers that are freely accessible to you, and as well as other databases, and then they'll be able to let you know if you might need to do paid access. The Newark Public Library has the New Jersey room. You can email them at the New Jersey room and they can tell you whether some libraries have free resources or paid ones. I'm not endorsing newspapers.com at all, but sometimes they have access to a couple of Black newspapers, as well as if you go to Rutgers University, they have access to 19th century newspapers. So those are two great places to start. Again, referencing the county programs. And I just want to, again, encourage people to visit the sites of the various programs and to continue to think about the exciting ways that folks have presented today, the varied and exciting ways. So engaging your children, your friends around history, there are different ways. So there's education, there's museums, there's outdoor activities, and we're really looking to share all of this information with folks as we continue to develop the African American History Program and the Black Heritage Trail. And we want to continue for all of you to join us while we do this. This program will be on the New Jersey Historical Commission's YouTube page over in probably a week and a half. We'll also be debuting the recordings from our New Jersey conference from last year, Freedom Seeker and Immigration. It was on freedom seeking, immigration, and migration to New Jersey, which featured the histories from African American migration to indentured servitude in Ireland to labor strikes in Trenton. It's a very exciting series, so those will be released next week as well. And again, we have a grant cycle coming up at the New Jersey Historical Commission in the next couple of weeks, so please check that out. As Cindy indicated, there for many of the sites, as our grants team is always looking at and figuring out ways to strategize around that, there are lots of organizations with budgets that are under 50,000. And this is something that we all will continue to kind of address and work around here at the commission and also at the other state and nonprofit agencies to preserve history. So that was a lot. I just want to say thank you all again. And I look forward to continuing conversations and and continuing to share the various stories with everyone.
Thank you.
Great. So I guess I'll just say good evening to everybody. And so
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody
Good
have a
night.
good night.
Thank you to the audience. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.